guy.
Freddy versus Jason.
Place your bets.
Carl and Lou here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's specific horror movie time. Now, when we went back and did our in-depth of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, you remember, if you've watched it, we talked about not quite understanding where to put Freddy versus Jason. We decided not to do it as part of that series because it's a combination of two, both Freddy and Jason. But I also didn't think it fitted in the Friday the 13th series either. We are planning to do that as an in-depth at the end of the year near our Halloween time, so look out for that many months into the future. So on reflection, I actually think this probably could have fitted in the Nightmare on Elm Street category more. It's definitely more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie than it is. However, I still don't think it. I think it's best to see this as a standalone.
Yeah,
it simply is. Yeah, which is what we did. 2003 American slasher film directed by Ronnie Yu and written by Damien Shannon and Mark Swift. The film is a crossover between a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and the Friday the 13th franchise, retroactively establishing them in a shared universe, which, you know, is something that had never been done before. It pits iconic horror film antagonists, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, against each other. But you'll have to wait a while for that part.
Yeah.
Now, those of you who know it, go all the way back to Jason Goes to Hell. That film will know that that movie ended famously with Jason's mask on after being defeated and sent to hell, lying in the ground. And the final shot of that movie being Freddy's glove bursting out and grabbing the mask. That was a very early hint towards what they wanted to do.
Wow.
But obviously there were issues. There was issues between the companies. They couldn't come to agreements. So this film just never actually happened until now. It is also the last film in each series before their respective reboots. A sequel to both Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, 1991, and Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, 1993. So it took 10 years for this film to come about. Officially it's the 8th in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and the 11th in the Friday the 13th franchise. If you were doing that, you know, but I do think it's better just to go, look, here's Nightmare, here's Friday, here's our crossover, here's our remakes. That's how you kind of do it. It was released in the US on August 15th, 2003, and grossed over 116 million worldwide, making it the highest grossing film in both franchises. And it makes sense, because if you look at this movie, it's of an era, it's glossy, it has all those touches, and it's designed to be one thing and one thing only: fun. Now, I think it is at times, but I also think it's incredibly dry, incredibly slow, incredibly boring a lot of the time.
I wanted it to be balls out all the way through. You've got two characters like this. Just could have done more with it.
Agreed. It should also be noted that this is the film that marked Robert Englund's final cinematic appearance as Freddy Krueger. After this, obviously, we get the remake played by Haley. We always forget his name. Jackie Earle Haley. There we go. Didn't forget it. Jackie Earle Haley taking on the role. And it's unlikely that Freddy Krueger will ever really don the mask again. He's getting on a bit now. Cast then: Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, Ken Krisinger as Jason Voorhees, Spencer Stump as young Jason Voorhees, Monica Keena as Laurie Campbell, Jason Ritter as Will Rollins, Kelly Rowland as Kia Waterson, Chris Marquette as Charlie Lindemann, Lachlan Monroe as Deputy Scott Stubbs. Fuck Greg. Catherine Isabel as Gibbs Smith, and Brendan Fletcher as Mark Davis. So the plot: Freddy handily opens this movie, bringing us up to speed in a sort of voiceover way. He's powerless in hell because the residents of Springwood have forgotten about him. So basically, if they don't remember him, they can't have nightmares. And if they're not having nightmares, he can't come and attack them.
It's a fair enough point.
Indeed. So he uses his powers to resurrect Jason Voorhees. Now, Jason is living in his own imaginary dream world, dead at the bottom of the lake in Camp Crystal Lake, the bottom of the lake where he was last. Well, not where he was last, because technically it wasn't where he was last, but basically where he is. And Jason's living in almost like a limbo area where he continues to relive the events. We see that as we open with a woman on a dock. You get some nice boobs there for you. And she's stalked by Jason and killed. Jason's mother then appears, and it's Freddy in disguise, basically saying to him, I want you to go to Springwood, and I want you to punish the kids there. And that's enough to resurrect Jason, apparently. And off he goes to Springwood. Yes, and that's the idea. So it's a solid idea. I'm not hating it.
I'm not mad at that, no.
I'm not hating the idea of, all right, Jason going on. And I really like Jason in this. While it's not played by my particular favourite version of Jason, it's still a solid, hulking-looking beast and looks the part. He's very, very cool. They filmed Jason in a way where the camera's always low, so you kind of always get that imposing size.
Yeah, which is what you need from him, isn't it?
It is. And I also like Freddy being manipulative as well, because that's very Freddy Krueger's kind of way. Trick scene rather than... Jason's muscle, Freddy's the brains.
Yeah.
You know? Should we talk about something you really didn't like? Because this is where you kind of get your early shots of Freddy Krueger. Now, Freddy's makeup is a little bit different here. In particular, I think you notice it with the teeth. For some reason, they've gone for sharpened teeth in this.
I didn't mind the teeth.
Yeah, okay, but you didn't like the makeup.
I thought it just looked really rubbery.
Yeah?
It didn't look like real skin. It looked literally like he'd pulled on like I'm not saying like a cheap one, but really expensive. You know when people get like reproduction Freddy mask they put on for Halloween? It looked like a really good one of them.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I do actually think you've nailed it there. A really, really expensive, good production quality version of Freddy's mask is really, really good. The reason why I like it is because if obviously it is a mask and stuff like that, so to speak, it moves perfectly with his face, his facial features. When he talks, when he goes wide-eyed, when he does things like that, to me it looks like skin, and that's an impressive job for me personally. So we have to now meet our cast, our victims, heroes, whatever you want to call them. And I'll be honest, look, this is the biggest flaw in this movie. It really is this part of the story. It really is. We have hilariously, let's just get into it. Laurie Campbell is the most important. She lives with her widowed father and having a sleepover with her friends Kaya and Gib. So there's 3 characters. Let's talk about each one. Laurie, played by Monica Keena. What did you think of her?
I didn't
bland, right?
Yeah, I did enjoy her for main like lead. I was like, I want more from her.
Very, very bland. Very bland. I really didn't get into her at all. I couldn't get behind her. I didn't get excited by her fighting back. I felt like a lot of the victim stuff they try and put on her felt forced and almost silly to a degree. Yeah. And this love story thing we'll get into in a bit really, really, really didn't land at all. Okay, Kia. Kelly Rowland's Kia.
Oh, she was sassy.
The worst thing in the movie for me.
Yeah.
The worst thing in the movie. Easily. She's not a good actor. No. Everything she says has this sass to it, which just starts getting annoying. There's a part later on where Lindemann runs her down, and she's like, afterward, that's the only point where I thought, okay, we got some character stuff. Where he runs her down, he's like, look, you're always trying to put me down because you're shitty and this, that kind of thing. And afterward, you see her come up to Lindemann and is like, hey man, do you want to dance? And she's being nice, but like almost like he got through to her. Like, you know, I'm being a dick here. Yeah. Why? And that kind of thing, that aspect. But there's a part at the end, which to me is probably the worst sequence of the movie, and it's where she's teasing Freddy. And she's like, ooh. And she also drops the F slur for a gay person, which 2003, fuck off with that, man. Yeah. Now you got to do that shit. She ends up dying anyway, so it was all good. But like at that point, I was like, I can't wait for you to die. Am I supposed to want you to die? I feel like I'm not. Yeah. I feel like I'm not, right? And although she doesn't have as much to do in it, Catherine Isabel as Gib. Now, I think Catherine Isabel is a wonderful, wonderful actor. Go check her out in Ginger Snaps for a damn good role. Beyond that, though, I think she sucks. And often what she's used for is, hey, you'll get your boobs out, won't you? And it's the same here. Yeah. Now, she's kind of like a bit punkier, a bit spunkier, that kind of thing. But she's also got a bit of an abusive boyfriend who demands she does this and all that sort of thing. But, you know, the issue for that with me is he's like, hey, come here. Hey, come here, Gib, and stuff like that. And she's like, okay then. And she's like, oh, what a prick. She still does it. Yeah. She still goes upstairs and sleeps with him and stuff like that. He's not like slapping her around. He's just like barking orders at her.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, didn't appreciate her.
Absolutely. And they're later joined by Trey, which is Gib's boyfriend, and his friend Blake. Trey's the one we're referencing to. He's not in it for long. He comes across like a dick. So that when he dies in a bit, you're kind of just like, oh, sweet.
So he's gone.
The same with Blake. Blake dies fairly earlier on, but he gets a little bit more as he's being set up with Laurie. Now, these early conversations in the house are some of the worst parts of the movie, as they literally, every line out of their mouth is exposition. Yeah. Exposition about Laurie's relationship she had previously with Will. Just dropped it. Oh, you're never going to find another boy like him. About her mother being dead. All this stuff is, and it's like, whoa, whoa. So we're not doing characters here. We're just, we need to tell you these things so that when we move on, you know
understand
them.
It, yeah.
And it's like, but why not tell me as we go along?
Poor right.
You know? Yeah. Why not have Blake come in, them trying to set her up, and then, like, when she's blown Blake off several times over, have a thing with Kia in the kitchen over that. You know me, like that aspect. Why are you trying to set me up? Oh, I'm just trying to help you move on, man. You know, you haven't had a date in a year and a half and so on, that kind of thing and stuff. You know, that aspect,
Just
right?
so forced in.
It really, really, really is. But anyway, we're all here to die. Well, some of them. Jason enters the house and he kills Trey. It's the first death, and it's the one that sets up the movie as being quite a violent and gory one. As he literally stabs Trey with his machete over and over again through the bed really violently, and then folds it up.
Nice.
Crushing
Trey.
Trey.
Reference of like the first death in Friday the 13th, isn't it?
The very first one? Not really, no.
More reference in the fact that he was lying on the bed waiting for a girl to come along and he was...
No.
Stab. Okay, I got that wrong.
I mean, I'm trying to remember what the first one is. But not to that level of brutality. The early movies didn't have that sort of level of brutality. That causes all the girls, they find his body, to panic and run, and they run out and they run into the cops and stuff like that. Then we randomly cut to Blake, who's like, he's swearing revenge. I'm going to get whoever killed you. And it's like, who? You're almost like, who are you again?
Yeah. Bland.
Oh yeah, you're the other guy. It's really irrelevant. Anyway, he kind of gets attacked by Freddy. He falls asleep, gets attacked by Freddy in the street. One of the many bad CG moments is Freddy's kind of uses his shadow to grow big and stuff like that. He tries to stab him. And then Blake says something really weird. Again, it's such bad dialogue. Kruger isn't able to stab him. It just goes through. And Blake goes, I'm okay. And you're like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
That's so weird. But Freddy, again, just speaking out loud, because he does that a lot to help the plot move on, goes, not strong enough yet. Will be soon. Like that kind of thing. You're like, oh, okay, cool. So that's the establishment that we're moving in a direction.
Yeah.
But when Blake wakes up, his father's sitting there, and he's like, hey, and then his dad's head falls off. And then Jason's there, and Blake dies anyway.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that was important, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All of that stuff. Absolutely. So the police, all that's happening, the police call it a murder-suicide the following day. That's what they suspect all of this was. And it turns out you hear a couple of cops whispering, and Laurie overhears that they're trying to... They goes, oh, it's similar to what happened all those years ago. And you find out that Laurie lives in the old house that Nancy lived in and stuff like that. And the main cop, the chief, is all like, oh, forget about it. We don't want to talk about it and bring him back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That makes sense.
It's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I really am. Here's the thing, though. Maybe, like, don't talk about Freddy at all. Because I would think the moment you start talking about him...
It's already
already starting.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, the other aspect then, the other part of the story that will eventually link up with ours, is Laurie's ex-boyfriend Will Rollins and his friend Mark Davis. So they have been institutionalized in Western Hill Psychiatric Hospital, and in there they're being forced to take the drug Hypnosil to suppress their dreams. Yep. This is all links back to early Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. Very happy with it. Very happy with it because it links a lot of it. Hypnosil, the hospital, perfectly fine. It's the same fucking hospital from Dream Warriors.
Yep.
It's the same drug from Dream Warriors.
Yeah. Keep them links in there. That's what we want.
And basically, they get institutionalized and on this drug because they've had previous contacts with Freddy. Now, let's talk about Will Rollins, Jason Ritter's character, and Mark Davis, Brendan Fletcher. Probably the best two things in the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
I would actually go as far as to say Mark Davis might be the best thing in it.
Yeah, because compared to the rest of the bland, drawn characters, I think you have to play it a little bit differently when you're you've had previous dealings with Freddy. Yep. You're on drugs now. Yeah, I feel like he did a better job than the rest of the cast.
Yeah, Will isn't great. He's very all-American boy, bit bland looking and stuff like that. And I often notice he does facial expression throughout the movie that looks like he's smelt a fart. Bad one. Not smell the fart, not smell the fart acting. I'm talking about you going,
yeah.
You know, like a stinger, like whatever. Whereas Brendan Fletcher's Mark Davis, here's one of the things. He looks different. And no, this sounds so silly, but in these movies, everyone kind of looks the fucking same. Yeah. They've gone for the prettiest American girls. They've gone for the prettiest American boys. And you get Mark Davis, who is not that good looking, blonde hair, different kind of shade of skin. He looks obviously different, and he immediately stands out.
Makes sense.
It's really, really interesting. Yeah. And he's passionate when he's involved in his certain scenes. Is the stuff you're like, okay, this is good stuff. I'm enjoying this. I've seen him in other stuff. He's a good actor. He's a good actor. They see a news report on the TV playing in the background. Now, this one annoyed the hell out of me. You would not have news playing in the background. No. There's a very high chance they're going to see something that might upset them. Anyone in that hospital.
Yeah, it's very TV would be very controlled in a psychiatric unit. Certain times of the day, certain programs, depending on the...
You're not going to have the news running.
No, of course not.
But yeah, they basically see about the Springwood killings, which prompts them to basically escape the hospital that night. It's not a terrible escape plan. I like it. Mark does the distraction to get the keys, and then they escape that way. Seemingly to help them get over the death of their friends and boyfriends, our group of women go to a rave in the cornfield.
As you do.
And I know they try and dress it up. They try and dress it up where it's like, oh, look, it'll help distract you. This particularly applies to Gib, whose boyfriend was killed. They're like, oh, it'll help distract me. She's like, yeah, fine, I'll go down and get drunk and that kind of thing. The same with Laurie and all that. There is a part where Laurie collapses at school and Kia is in the waiting room looking at nose jobs. Probably the worst CG in the movie alone. I laugh my head off every time I see it. And then she falls asleep, so she starts to have a dream. She's flicking through the pages, and it's each gorier than gorier. And then Freddy, got your nose, pops up with his fingers and rips her nose off. It looks so bad. Yeah. It's so bad.
But it's classic Freddy, though, that kind of line.
It is classic Freddy. I don't mind the pun spinning shit in it. This is what Freddy is at this point. It's perfectly fine. But yeah, so the Raven the Cornfield is where our next big sequence occurs. It also is arguably the best part of the movie for Jason's stuff. In that, Gib ends up getting so drunk and falling asleep and collapsing in the cornfield, where we see some guy decide to rape her, which was like, oh, awesome. So we do get the kind of, in her dream, we get the Freddy Krueger chase through the boiler room area and that kind of thing. She ends up hiding in a locker. But just as he's about to kill her with a living blow, her inside splatter out across Freddy. Yeah. And we see in the real world, Jason is stabbed through the guy that was raping her. Yeah. And her, like with his machete, killing them both. Yeah. More than happy with it. It was awesome.
Crossing both worlds.
Yep.
Bit of gore. Yeah, I quite like that.
It also develops a story as Freddy screams that, no, he says like, no, she was mine. Yeah. So it's like, okay, you have a problem now. Yeah. But we also then get Jason just going to town as he flings the body through the air, so it comes crashing down in the middle of the rave, and then starts attacking people. And just walking in and slashing. He gets set on fire, and it continues. It is fucking incredible. Yeah. It's won an award for this full body burn because he is fully on fire. But normally this is quite brief. This goes on a good 60 seconds of him walking and moving and slashing and killing.
Yeah, because of the work that goes into doing them kind of scenes.
It looks great, doesn't it? It's not CGI. Yeah. That's the most important thing. They were stunt acting this shit. We're putting you on fire, and you're gonna be moving. I like that. Awesome shit. Yeah. I love it. I thought it was great. It makes Jason look like an absolute... Like, it makes Jason look like, wow. Yeah. Wow. That guy is generally terrifying. Absolutely. But in Escape, we should say at this point, Will as well have an escape has now met up with Laurie. He run into her at school, in fact, but they knocked her out. And they've all ended up at the rave, basically. Yeah. That's where they meet up. But they escape as well alongside the character of Lindemann, Charlie Lindemann. Now, we didn't mention Lindemann before because who gives a fuck? We meet him at school. He's the nerd. Of course he's the fucking nerd. And he's got the hots for Laurie. Yeah. But she's got eyes for someone else. Yeah. It's for Will. So it's irrelevant. And I don't really know. Does he do anything of significance in this movie? No. Beyond having a go at Kia.
No, not really. It's just more fodder, isn't it, really?
Yeah, that's all it is. It's more fodder. They also escape with a guy called Bill Freeberg, who's this stoner guy, and you're like, wait, who's he? I know I've seen him like in the background a bit, but like, why is he here?
Yeah, just adding people.
Yeah, it's really weird adding. You're like, well, he's added because he's going to die. To be fair, he is used in a scene I really do like. Deputy Scott Stubbs, fuck Greg, makes contact with Laurie and her friends, and he's basically been suspicious and worked out that he thinks it's all related to Freddy Krueger. He's been investigating and stuff like that. He's just another character thrown in. And that's where they learn about Hypnosil. They want to steal it from Western Hills. The idea is to stop themselves from dreaming. We're going to break into the hospital and steal it. We do get more dream sequences. Laurie falls asleep when they're all discussing the plan. Yep. And in her dream, they all turn on her and plan to sacrifice her as a virgin to Freddy. But she ends up waking up before it's anything. The next major sequence is inside the hospital as Freddy possesses the stoner guy, Bill Freeberg. It's why he was here. In what is an iffy scene, right?
Yeah.
An iffy scene. He's basically a giant worm dog.
Yeah.
CG comes in and he starts smoking a bong together.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because it kind of ties into how the silliness of, say, Freddy's Dead with Johnny Depp and This Is Your Brain on Drugs and all that crap stuff. But it looks like shit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you could do something, use like the way what you've got with you. 2003. I'd say like to go from the fire scene to poorly thought out scenes like that. It's just be like, oh, okay.
Yep. But he also then possesses Freebug. The worm thing goes down his throat, and he uses him to dispose of all the medicine, so he won't have any hypnosil. But happily, Jason has arrived, and he smashes around the door, and he kills Deputy Stubbs here. One of the more violent scenes is he basically smashes his face into all his electrical equipment, setting his skin on fire and stuff like that.
Nasty.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. And Greg's out of it. I know, right, I should explain. We keep saying Greg. If you've seen a scary movie, you know this guy plays Greg in that. And we always laugh our heads off whenever we see him because of the part where his girlfriend, Shannon Elizabeth, after Greg's been killed, apparently, and finds out she's won, she's like, the main girl's like, oh, what about Greg? And she's running to collect the crown. Fuck Greg! Yeah. And it's just like, it always makes us laugh because it's this guy.
I can't take him seriously.
Yeah, it is a struggle. We know that movie so well. And
I think he does look like an American jock. I think some films, it works. Other horror films where they make an old character. I think it was like My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
They made like a young teenager into a police officer. But there was a bit more development.
Oh, Keir Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in this, I'm just like, no, he's just Greg.
Yeah, it was the Keir Smith from Final Destination moving into that role, and we were able to buy it. It's harder with him.
Yeah, definitely.
So after that, the rest are all trying to run away and escape from Jason. However, as they're running past, Freebug is standing there, and this is where I credit this guy's quality acting. He looks completely different. Yeah. Like, he looks demonic, his eyes are low, and he's got his hands behind his back. And as I think it's Laurie Kia says to him, and he says something like, he says in a deep, low voice, it's not quite Freddy, but clearly is Freddy, about like, I'm going to deal with this bitch. Yeah. And they're like, okay, cool. So Jason approaches, and he's got 2 tranquilizer injections, and he stabs them both into Jason's shoulders, and Jason then cuts him in half with his machete, which is another really violent scene. But Jason falls unconscious. Tranquilizes them, causes them to fall asleep. Yep. It's brilliant. So they come up with a plan. Basically, they worked out that they can pull part of Freddy in. Laurie did it earlier on where she pulled a bit of Freddy's skin into the real world. So it's basically that plot point from the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So they're thinking, okay, if we pull Freddy from the dream world into reality, and then he can fight Jason, and they can hopefully kill each other. Yeah. And the plan is to bring the conscious Jason to Camp Crystal Lake, where he's on home turf. They even say that. Yeah. It'll be home turf for Jason. He goes to Camp Crystal Lake, and then Freddy's there, and they divide. So we're all leading to what everybody wanted. Yeah. Freddy versus Jason.
Fighting each other, yeah.
And then we kind of see Freddy fighting Jason in the dream world, and Jason gets the upper hand originally, but obviously in the dream world, Freddy's super strong. His limbs just grow back. But he can't kill Jason either. But he does discover his weakness, which is water. And that, because obviously related to the fact that Jason, as a child, drowned. Yeah. So he utilises water to basically turn Jason powerless, almost regress him back to a child. You see him as a deformed child and stuff like that. You do get some nasty scenes as Freddy puts his finger into his head, and you sort of see Jason's thoughts about what had occurred and things like that. In the real world, Jason is drowning. You actually see this, like he's lying there spluttering up water, and they're going to do a thing about someone having to give him mouth to mouth. Laurie panicking, realising there's trouble, she says that she's going to go sleep and go in there to save Jason. In it, as they approach the camp, Jason does actually wake up. He wakes up from his dream. The tranquilizer's worn up and causes the car to crash and chases them into cabins. That's where we lose Lindemann. Not directly, but he gets slammed against a wall, and you kind of see that he hit like a sharp thing sticking out, and you see blood left behind. He will die shortly later. Laurie's then awakened as she's fighting Freddy. Her arm falls on fire, which wakes her out of a tranquilized state, and she pulls Freddy into the real world where he's confronted by Jason. I do like the look of Freddy's face when he realizes where he is. He's sort of looking around like, oh, this isn't...
This doesn't end well for me.
Yes. And this is, you even get like a butt rock sort of music beginning to kick it, like a riff, that kind of thing. And they fight. And it is a long fight across these campgrounds. That is part fun, part overtly silly. Very violent, very gory. There's a lot of blood splattered here. It isn't. I think it's enjoyable. When you're watching a film like this, we're not watching it to be taking it that seriously. No, Let's just have this idiocy.
And it's called Freddy versus... Like, it's stupidly titled. When you put verses in something, you know it's going to be culminating in a scene. And it's not going to be, like, deep or moving. It's going to be exactly what it says on the tin. Yep,
and here's the cool thing. It feels solid. A lot of the part where Jason grabs Freddy, smashes him through the cabin window, and then proceeds to drag his body through the wall. Yeah. It's solid looking shit. Or the part where he knocks all the gas canisters, starts flinging them, and they're flying in, and it's a great shot because Jason's walking, they're swinging past, and then one hits him in the chest, and you hear that thump, and you're like, okay, that's doable. There are other parts where it's very pratfally, when Freddy gets caught upside down, hanging from the swinging thing, and he's just being knocked into things. We missed a point as well, going back to when he's fighting Jason inside his dream world originally. He's flinging Jason about, and for some reason they add pinball sound effects.
Yeah.
Things like that, where I think they make it too silly.
Too far.
Too silly. They fight, they cut each other. No one seems to be able to get the upper hand. In between that, we lose Lindemann as he bleeds to death, and Kia also gets killed as she teases Freddy, and then walks backwards into Jason, who just hits her with his machete, and her body hits the tree, and she's dead. So that leaves two humans. That leaves Laurie and Will. You know, those aspects. As Freddy and Jason get to the dock, it gets overtly violent, almost exhaustingly violent, as Freddy loses his arm. Yep. He ends up using his own arm to stab Jason as well. And they're sort of, it's the sprays of blood. Yeah. As they cut each other, blood is spraying out, that aspect. Yeah. I quite like it.
Yeah, I like that. So go be more violent. Because say the silliness is just not as enjoyable. I don't know. Little bits of it, but yeah, go all out, go violent. Yeah,
it does end in a violent way, as Laurie and Will also then set the dock on fire. The propane tanks nearby explode. It is a decent explosion. It's big, what you would expect if a propane tank was going to blow up. And it's enough that it flings Freddy and Jason on fire into the lake, quite a distance as well, which was a cool sort of, alright, cool, this is how we get into the end sequence. They think they've won. Why? I don't know.
It's sort of supernatural. It's not going to be as easy as that.
Of course not. Of course not. Freddy ends up climbing out, and as he's about to kill Laurie and Will, he's impaled by his own claw. It kind of comes through his back and out his front. And that ties into how he died in a New Nightmare. Not New Nightmare, sorry. Freddy's Dead as well. And then Laurie decapitates him. Welcome to my dream, bitch, or something like that in it. Yeah. It's your usual final line that doesn't work. Jason falls into the lake. Freddy, decapitated, falls into the lake, and it seems to be done. Laurie and Will leave the scene after throwing Jason's machete into it. And like, that's it. That's it for them. We then cut to like the following morning, and we see Jason emerging from the water. He's holding Freddy's severed head in his hands. And the camera pans down to his head, and we see that Freddy winks, and his laughter is heard, implying, obviously, he's still alive. Of course, that was the whole point. And that's it. And you end in rocking music and stuff like that. This is I can't say this is a good or a bad movie. I think it sits squarely in the middle, where you kind of almost at time what it is. It's this is crap. This is crap. Oh, that was good. Yeah. This is crap. This is crap. Oh, that was good. This is crap. Oh, that was. That's what it is. It's a film of moments more than anything else.
And it feels like you're trying to make Jason, who didn't have doesn't talk, so he hasn't got the quirkiness or the silliness. It's more brutal with Jason's side of things. Yep. Compared to Freddy and his puns and silliness. And I don't think they knew how to put them together properly.
You reckon? I think they're not the problem. I think the problem comes everywhere else with our cast of human characters. I think the desperation to try and add we've glossed over some elements that worth glossing over purely because fuck him for even being in the movie. The aspect with Laurie and her father, she thinks her mother died in a car crash. It turns out her father, Will apparently saw her father killing her mother, and then it turns out that it wasn't that. Her mother was killed by Freddy, and her father came in, and it's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, if you don't bring something up, you're not going to. That feels like they maybe did a deleted scene. Bringing it up.
What did it have other than the part where her father chases her through the house? But it turns out he wasn't wrong anyway. They imply he's a bad guy because he's the one administering Hypnosil, but they're trying to stop Freddy Krueger to save kid. Yeah. Like, it's really like, why is that there? Yeah. That, we didn't mention Mark's death because it's kind of like, oh, it just is. He dies in the bathroom when his brother committed suicide, apparently. And his brother comes out of the bathtub and he ends up dying at the hands of Freddy, who sends a message by burning him. And it's like, okay. That was there. There's lots of these little parts where you're just like, oh, that's a thing. I don't really needed them. No. And I don't care about the human side of things because none of these characters are developed enough to give a shit about. Yeah. They've tried to make Laurie she's the final girl. We get that. We get that. But it's like, oh, she's got this problem as well and this problem and stuff like that. All while trying to act like her and Will are some really long-lost lovers couple thing. But they lack chemistry. Yeah. I never got it. Did you get this kind of deep love?
Needs to be better acted to get that come across.
It's almost like there's too much going on in this movie. You've got this whole, we need Freddy here, we need Jason, we need to get them together, we need to have them fight, we need to explain why Freddy can't come back, we need to explain how Jason can come back. But in between that, we also need a ton of victims. But we also need to try and, we can't just put victims in there, we've got to have some level of character.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is why our first 5 minutes are all this crappy exposition where you will literally sit there going, oh my God, this dialogue is terrible.
Yeah.
They're just telling you, you know, it's like, picture that in real life. Like, you know, you're sitting there having a conversation with someone. You don't have these conversations. You're not like, oh, you know, how was your day today? Well, it was as good as that time. Do you remember that? It was, my day's been as good as that time all those years ago when you stubbed your toe and then killed that guy.
Yeah.
That's not how people talk.
No, and as well, like sometimes you have to frame moments with something a bit more official. So, like dealing with someone's death, maybe someone visits to something legal to do with death.
Yeah.
That's a way of segmenting into, you can detail, after your parents' death 2 years ago,
Yep.
we've got to come and do this, I don't know, legal check or something like that. Frame it around something that's happening to that character and go, oh, okay, I haven't got to be told. You've explained it via this mechanism.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And sometimes you can even be like, well, that's a bit forced in, but I accept it.
Yeah.
Because we needed it,
Yeah.
and it works well enough that I'm okay with it. But when people are just sitting there saying words to each other, the first time we're seeing them on screen, talking about events in such an unnatural way, because like as if that's the first time Kia would have ever said that to her.
Yeah.
It's crazy, crazy stuff.
It's like American Dad sums up really well. Like Francine, she's on the phone in one scene to her sister.
Yep.
He's like, oh yeah, I don't know why I call you sister. I mean, it seems a bit clunky.
Sis.
Sis, yeah. It's a bit clunky and expositional. Why am I calling you sis? Like,
Yeah, it's because they would needed us to suddenly know Francine had a sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, abso-fucking-lutely. Very, very strange. The positive stuff comes from this is from the villain aspect. And it's simply the Freddy stuff, the Jason stuff is all entertaining. Jason has done better because he's more violent than Freddy is earlier on. But ultimately, you're sitting and watch Freddy versus Jason. You're not expecting deep detail. What you're waiting for is the fight, the big thing. Yeah. The question is it worth getting through this movie to that? No. I agree. I actually don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think it's good. I think it's fun. But and remember, bear in mind, it's constantly cutting away to shit that's going on with the others as well.
Yeah.
At that point, that's where you're like, oh, come on, man. And it's just, it's a long way to get. This isn't a short movie either. You're not talking an 80-minute movie here either, where it's kind of concise. You've got to get there a long, long slog. It's not the worst Nightmare on Elm Street movie. No. It is not the worst Friday the 13th movie. That's the thing.
I wouldn't rush to put it on again.
This is squarely in the middle. Yeah. It is what it's supposed to be. It's a popcorn film. You know, a couple of beers, group of people, you probably have a bit more laugh than sitting there perfectly trying to analyse it and stuff like that. Which is fine if that's completely what they were going for. But then they had too much detail in about Hypnocell and about Freddy and about the past and all this. You're like, okay, you want us to have more thoughts about this than just, fuck all that. Here's some people dying. Yeah. Here's Freddy versus Jason. So for me, right in the middle. Not bad, not good. Squarely in the middle. Yep. Check it out once. That's all you need to do, particularly if you know the franchises around it. Yep. Probably better you know Nightmare than Friday, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, Jason's pretty much solid violence. Doesn't say much, so you don't need to know the nuances of Jason's character and the way he doesn't talk. So you've not got to get on board with that. But with Freddy, you've got to have an idea of what he does. Agreed.
And yeah, the dreams aspect more than anything else. But if you love it, let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?